On a quiet morning in Memphis, workers paused before an old wall deep in the basement of the Jameson and Associates building, a landmark since 1923. On March 15th, 2024, the city moved as always, unaware that in the darkness of its past, a forgotten door was about to be unlocked. As Marcus Williams swept his flashlight across the broken bricks, the sound of his hammer striking metal echoed like a voice from another era. He had uncovered a small, anonymous safe, hidden in the wall, with no sign, no inscription, nothing to tell of its existence. That was the moment when fate, or perhaps the destiny of a legend, began to shift. The building's owner, long convinced he knew every corner, was speechless at the news. Decades of property records made no mention of this safe. When an experienced locksmith arrived, tension filled the air. The safe, as he concluded, was a high-end model from the 1970s, newer than the building itself. When the door swung open, time seemed to freeze. Inside lay carefully sealed white documents, untouched by age. One paper, bearing a still fresh signature, stood out: Elvis Aaron Presley. No one could speak. Those present understood they were touching not just a relic, but a fragment of the soul, a piece of destiny of a man revered by the world. The news spread like wildfire. Handwriting experts, lawyers, historians all confirmed the signature, the paper, the ink, all real, all dating back to 1976. But what sent chills through everyone was not just authenticity, it was the words themselves, stories never told. Shadows Elvis kept to himself. Why would someone hide such a will? Who had the power, the motive, to conceal the final wishes of a legend? In every word, you could feel Elvis's silent sighs. A father, an artist, a lonely soul, always fearing betrayal. Terrified his legacy would be twisted. As dusk fell over Memphis, outside Graceland's stained glass windows, the world remembered Elvis Presley as the king of rock and roll, a great father, an American icon. But deep beneath an old building, what was found that day revealed a different Elvis: thoughtful, wounded, wary even of those he loved most. Perhaps his loneliness did not end on those blazing concert nights, but lingered in a forgotten will where he whispered secrets, wishes never spoken aloud. Maybe this is the moment when the world must face the final truth, the truth of an Elvis betrayed by those he once loved most. The small office was heavy with silence, broken only by the rustle of pages and anxious glances. That will, the piece of paper the world had searched for across nearly half a century, now lay on the table, like a wound that had never healed. Some secrets are not buried out of shame, but because they are too painful to speak aloud. Elvis, the man who once stood atop the world, bathed in stage lights and deafening applause, spent his final years feeling isolated within his own home. He grew suspicious of everyone around him, from his lawyer and manager to the ex-wife he once trusted above all else. Only a handful knew of the new will, signed by Elvis in 1976. Those pages told of a silent anxiety that haunted a great artist. He felt trapped, swept into a current of money, power, and greed. Elvis feared that his legacy, the thing he valued above all material wealth, would be commercialized. Twisted by hands that no longer loved him, he wrote of the pain when he realized Priscilla, the woman who had once meant everything, was quietly becoming a force, weaving herself into every financial decision, every secret meeting, every whispered conversation. In Harold Morrison's notes, kept with the will, there was the image of a drained Elvis, sitting for hours in a private room, trusting only this one man. They met in secret, late at night, hiding from all eyes. As if Elvis knew he was being watched, Morrison recorded Elvis's words. "There are things I cannot tell anyone but you. Harold, I'm afraid that when I'm gone, my final voice will be buried." 2. The story turned tragic as Elvis admitted in his will, "I cannot fully trust anyone close to me." He feared Priscilla, though outwardly acting for their daughter, was slowly taking control of everything. Mysterious phone calls, nameless meetings, financial reports filled with questions, all described by Elvis in cold, disparate language. But perhaps the deepest pain was his fear for little Lisa Marie, that she would be pulled into the same whirlpool. In every line, he pleaded with fate to protect her from ambition, family wars, and the loneliness that had haunted him. Elvis wanted not only to keep his fortune, but to defend his spirit, his memories, his dignity, those priceless things no money could buy. That will hidden for nearly 50 years was like a farewell letter sent from a distant place, hoping one day someone loving and understanding enough would open it and read the aching heart of a father, a man betrayed by those he loved most. As night fell over Memphis, somewhere in the city, Elvis's sad songs still echoed, but in the darkness, one question lingered: has anyone ever truly listened to him? Or are we all just lonely souls, passing by, leaving behind a will never read? Within those pages, perhaps the most heartbreaking thing was not the money or the property, but the way Elvis chose to face his past, how he remembered the people who were once his lifeblood, those who stood by him in silence through the storms. Unlike the public will crafted by lawyers and managers, this secret will overflowed with private messages, with apologies, gratitude, and pleas for forgiveness that Elvis never managed to say aloud. He left the bulk of his estate to those who quietly protected him: Red West, Sonny West, the bodyguards who stood between him and danger; Mary Jenkins, the woman who cooked for him through decades; Pauline Nicholson, the steadfast nanny who remained at Graceland in his darkest days; and his loyal musicians like James Burton, Ronnie Tutt. Each was given not only financial security, but a belated acknowledgement, a thank you long overdue. For Lisa Marie, he did not simply leave a fortune to inherit at once. Elvis created a trust, opened gradually as she matured, so his little girl would not be ensnared by the traps of wealth and fame, the very things that had made him lonely all his life. He wanted her to be free, to learn, to grow as a normal child, to know love and protection in its truest form. But Elvis could not escape the darkness that loomed over Graceland, the house he called the heart of a whole lineage. He wrote plainly, Graceland was not to be sold, not to become a museum, never to commercialize private memories. Every room, every object, every garden corner was to belong to family, to Lisa Marie and the generations that followed. He must have foreseen the worst, that after he left this world, those he once trusted would break promises, would commercialize every memory, would turn Graceland into a destination for millions of strangers, and, like a knife twisting in the heart, every fear he wrote down became reality. Years later, when that will was finally revealed, those who had remained loyal to Elvis wept. They realized that through decades of being forgotten and cast aside, they had always been loved and appreciated. Yet the pain did not fade. No one could give back lost time, youth gone by, feelings misunderstood, or the silent scars on the heart of a legend. At the end of many pages, Elvis often wrote a single line: If anyone truly hears me, please keep these promises for my daughter and for those who stood by me to the end. Memphis nights are still cold, but perhaps somewhere in the shadows, the lonely souls who once walked with him are smiling at last, for finally, their true devotion has been recognized, if only in words never read until now. Perhaps Elvis Presley's greatest tragedy was not his final years of addiction or the exhaustion of endless nights on stage. The true pain came from silent betrayal from those he once trusted completely. Priscilla, the woman who once held his heart, became a distant figure in the legacy he built. Lisa Marie, the little girl he longed to protect, grew up in a world that no longer echoed with her father's real presence. After Elvis's death, the public will was pushed to the forefront, while every unusual clause in the true will was buried, distorted, or quietly erased. Graceland, the sanctuary Elvis wanted for his family, became a tourist attraction. Millions of strangers walked through its rooms, its halls. Et fragile memory, objects sacred to Elvis became mere museum pieces, scrutinized, photographed, sold as lifeless commodities. Priscilla, once his companion in youth, emerged as the new mistress of Graceland, the manager of his legacy, retelling Elvis's story in her own voice. She welcomed journalists, cameras, tourists, remodeling and rewriting every memory left behind to suit her own interests. Lisa Marie, despite growing up surrounded by fame, never found a true refuge. She inherited a vast fortune too soon, exactly as Elvis had feared, and ultimately had no one by her side to guide her through the shadows of her family history. The letters Elvis wrote for his daughter, filled with love and worry, never reached her when she needed them most. Somewhere, surely, Elvis felt it all. Graceland was no longer a home, but a land of sorrowful memories. Every wall, every garden path, every lonely melody at night was a call from a dream betrayed. Those most loyal, those entrusted with Elvis's deepest thoughts in the secret will, could only watch in silence as the house was lost. Piece by piece, beneath the footsteps of tourists, they could do nothing, say nothing, for every piece of evidence had been hidden away. Every bit of power held by the one rewriting Elvis's story. The haunting question echoes in Graceland's darkness. If one day all secrets come to light, will anyone recognize Elvis's true dream, or will there only be scattered fragments? Silent shadows, passing each other in a sea of strangers. And Lisa Marie, the final heir to the Presley legacy, will she ever find the answers she's searching for? Decades slipped by, and Memphis remained steeped in the sorrowful music of a golden age long past. Yet one day, when the cold wall of that forgotten basement finally gave way, pages of the will never before read rang out like echoes from another world. The final truth emerged, not as someone's retelling, but as the true voice of a lonely soul, of a father who never got to say his last words to his daughter. That will, hidden for so many years, was not just a legal document, it was Elvis Presley's final letter to Lisa Marie, to those who quietly loved him, and to the lost souls that still lingered around Graceland. In every word was the pain of betrayal, the helpless sigh before ambition, the fragile hope that, one day, his true legacy would find its way back to the deserving. Those once forgotten Red West, Sunny West. Mary Jenkins, upon hearing of the true will, fell silent among the crowds. They had lived their lives in the shadows. But at last, the world was made to listen, to recognize the loyalty and quiet kindness that Elvis had so deeply cherished. Lisa Marie, after weathering so many storms, now sat alone in a cold room at Graceland. In her hands were letters never opened, words from her father that childhood had never allowed her to hear. Every page was a cut, a belated embrace. A voice from afar she had spent a lifetime searching for. Yet from these pages, Lisa Marie learned she was never truly alone because, no matter what, her father had loved her, had worried for her, had prayed she would outlast the shadows of fame and loss. Graceland's doors remain open. Crowds still arrive. But from that moment, in the hearts of those who truly loved Elvis, the house was no longer a site of curiosity or celebrity, but a sanctuary for the silent voice of a broken heart. Perhaps the real value of a legacy is not in wealth, not in fame, but in the lessons that linger through time. Family, when betrayed, leaves wounds that never heal, but when listened to, understood, it becomes a flame that lights the way for all who follow. At the end of the road, no matter how the world changes, no matter how many secrets were once buried, Elvis's dreams and love endure in the songs, in the tears, and in the souls that never truly left Graceland. Night falls over Graceland, pale yellow lights washing over the roof that once sheltered a legend. Outside, people drift by, curious, nostalgic, carrying unspoken sorrow. But perhaps, somewhere in that stillness, the soul of Elvis Presley sits quietly on the old porch, watching the strangers pass, listening to the wind whispering through the trees he once loved. The secret will has finally been revealed, yet the wounds of the past remain. Among millions who idolized Elvis, only a few are patient enough to listen to the very end, to realize that behind every spotlight, there is a heart that aches, that sacrifices, that longs to be truly understood by those it loves most. We live surrounded by monuments, by stories repeated across generations, but sometimes what endures is not greatness itself, but a loneliness unseen by the world, a yearning to be heard, to be loved, to keep something real and private amidst a sea of strangers. Elvis left the stage long ago, yet his voice, his hidden hopes, his unfinished dreams linger, echoing through the darkness of Graceland. Perhaps the final truth is not about victory or defeat, but a lesson for us all. The greatest tragedy is not loss, but when a final voice is forgotten in the noise of the world. If someday you find yourself at Graceland, pause a while by an empty window. Close your eyes and listen. Maybe you'll sense the echo of a soul that never faded, the soul of a man once called a king. But above all, a father, a fragile heart in a boundless world. Behind the limelight, beyond the glitter, there are always untold stories. If this journey touched you, leave a comment, share, and subscribe, so together we can remember and cherish